whether forms and expressions are biblical, then I put down your statement because of some stuff I've been reading lately. Well, thinking about the South, I mean, I've just been amazed at the history of the South, because you had white people who were so Christian in some ways. I mean, they were so committed to gospel and church and everything, and they did the most horrendous things to other human beings probably in human history, you know. So, you know, people thought they were being biblical, but we had slavery, and we had people being taught foreign language, meaning English, as the only language they were allowed to use in reservation schools. And when I grew up, Easter bonnets were a big thing, and that probably wasn't all that biblical either, in terms of the way the ladies treated it with the pride they had in their new Easter bonnets, of all those kind of funny questions. So, anyway, there.
Lynn, may I just ask a quick question? Is how do you want us to?
And then this one I think is real important in Richard Quiss's thinking and the question that's going on with some of us nowadays, and that is when we have someone who comes from, let's say, a non-Western European background, particularly. Now, native people here, it could be, I have a friend in Dallas who works with a church that deals with all kinds of language groups that come into that service. So to remove barriers, it says, to new believers and seekers, understanding of, acceptance of, and participation in church worship. In other words, if the gospel has often been called, we talk about the offense of the gospel. You know what that is? I think there's two. We usually talk about it. One of the offenses is that the Bible tells us we're sinners. That's offensive to us. We don't want to be sinners. We want to think we're okay. And that's one offense. Okay. And another one is that Christianity claims to be right. You know, and so why do we bother with missionaries if all other beliefs are equally true paths to God and so on? Why share the gospel? They're already okay. They already got their relationship with God. So that can be offensive too. So the thing though is, if our cultural forms, if something in the way we do things that we are not even conscious maybe in how we design some of our church, our expressions or whatever, that creates a needless barrier to someone hearing the gospel, then that's where you try to, I guess, consider, at least be aware as much as we can of where the cultural dimensions themselves come in. And so that, I won't go on with that for a minute, because I want to get on to second page for you. This business of syncretism, you know, something is sync. It just means it fits together, right? And so, in this case, I mean, I have a particular definition or meaning of syncretism in my mind, and that is, and you can have syncretism, you can bring, we've got the historic and the biblical teaching and so on, and then we bring things, we run into another way maybe of believing, another way of doing prayers, or another way of doing ceremonies, and we bring in these elements, maybe as trying to reflect or express something of local culture. And that can be in belief, you can have syncretism in belief, or in practice, or in worship forms. Okay? And the syncretism I'm talking about basically is when we bring something together that has in it some kind of conflict. Okay? And so I was, this second page just was off the top of my head the other day. I haven't changed it. I haven't thought it through much further. Okay, but I thought maybe this would be a little helpful in our thinking about what syncretism, first of all, is not.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. The book that we got, Richard Twiss, he talks a lot about the Jesus way. And I don't think we really, through Christianity and the things we're talking about, is really being a true reflection of Jesus' way. Because he had talked about Jesus' way was the Native Americans' way in the beginning. So when you go through all these rules and regulations, I call it, is it really the Jesus way, or did we ever put the time to really understand Jesus' way? Because it wasn't until after he was crucified and he arose, and the people, his disciples, didn't come out to speak out on it until 20, 30 years later. And in that time, did anybody really understand Jesus?
Yeah.
So when we go
Did
through
what?
this, did
In that
anybody
time?
really understand that time? Did anybody really understand who Jesus was? Because Christians were all persecuted by the Romans. So he didn't really speak out. So nobody really sat down and said, oh, I remember Jesus. He came here and he did this miracle. And I actually touched him. I can understand him and that kind of thing. But instead we got all these rules and regulations of how we're supposed to believe. And that's probably the big part that I always struggle with, because he's going through the Bible and trying to find those things where it actually talks about him, the witnesses that people saw of him. So,
Yeah, that's-
so I
that's
say
a-
that because that's kind of
that's a
what
central-
Richard was talking
Yeah,
about.
central question.
Jesus' way.
Yeah.
What
It
was
is,
that?
yeah.
And I think that really should be the focus of Christianity. I mean, really, what was his way?
And I think some people view, I don't particularly, but I think some people wrestle with the idea that the institutional church gets so caught up with its forms and practices and teachings that we're not looking directly at Jesus anymore, and what he did and what he taught and who he is and what our relationship is directly with him. So I hope you don't. I hope you don't give up that question.
Well, just part of the Catholics are going through that right now, and selecting a new pope. All this ritual and all these things is just.
And the whole development after the Gospels, as we call them, when Paul is one of the obviously main writers, and the others then elaborate on more of the teachings and the doctrines. And some people, I think, get caught up in those, or think other people get caught up to where they actually forget Jesus' teaching. I think they fit, but that, I think there are people who try to really look at Jesus and understand him directly, but sometimes then they dismiss the benefit of the other writings. So
The other writings again, or what?
I mean, the other scriptures.
Okay.
In other words, what did Jesus say himself in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and that kind of thing, and then they sort of almost ignore the benefit of having the other writings of James, Peter, and so on. So,
Yeah, and I was bringing that up because of what's written in here.
yeah.
You know, it's all.
So,
It's kind of like it's structured,
Yeah.
but it's not really getting to.
but what I was suggesting here is that when we think about whatever we're familiar with our Christian faith, okay, and that understanding, then we have different things that come from our social and cultural experience. And maybe in life or in worship, we come to these elements and say, are these okay, or do we have to toss these out because now we're Christian if we come from another background? So these were just examples off the top of my head. In Navajo, as you may know, and also in Lakota and so on, you have like a mother-in-law, son-in-law avoidance. My mother-in-law never talked to her if her Navajo son-in-law, her first one, if he came in the room, she'd leave, or if she came in the room, he'd leave. That's out of respect, not dislike, right? Avoids conflict. That's how you keep that respect, by avoiding that conflict.
I should have done that with my mother-in-law.
I saw a young lady.
With my mother-in-law.
I saw a young lady that I worked with just the other day, ran into her in the Golden Corral eating, and she's probably in her, probably around 40 now. Last I knew, she had never talked to her father-in-law, and they didn't live that far apart, you know. That's kind of unusual anymore, okay? But that's out of respect. Now what happens if people become Christians? Does that mean you can't keep that respect relationship that way? No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a respect thing.